by that, I got somehow involved to actually become a daycarer for I think three or 3.5 years myself.
Oh,
So
wow. Oh,
I got
wow.
I got trained as a daycarer, and have taken other children as well. And I think one of the most interesting like occurrences in that time was when I met an old lady who was approaching me when I walked with I think 4 or 5 children. I think it have been 4 or 5, and she was just so amazed seeing a man in my age walking with those children, and she just talked to me, and I shared with her that I'm a daycarer and that I'm doing this professionally. I didn't earn a lot of money for this, but it gave me the opportunity to connect my daughter with other children, have a
Right.
little bit work, being self-employed, and like having just this right environment, because we also didn't live close by her grandparents, for example. So and she was just so amazed by this, and I asked her, how many children do you have? And she was saying something like 6 or 7. And so I turned it around and said, actually, I should be the person who should be inspired by you because of the stuff you're doing. And she was so touched by this, and then we had a conversation around this, and it really like made me so aware, like people, especially women, were like so um, amazed and appreciating me doing this work, but it doesn't really happen the other way around.
I really appreciated having Björn Michael as my guest as part of the 31 Days of Transferable Skills initiative. Björn is a life coach and facilitator who believes that fulfillment and contentment make people peaceful and generous. As facilitator, he loves to create safe spaces for sharing vulnerability. As a mentor, Björn enables people to feel comfortable and serves them to achieve sustainable life transformations. He is originally from Germany, but currently he is traveling with his family in a motorhome across Europe. And so in our conversation, we spoke about the transferable skills that he has learned from his current motorhome journey, as well as during his time as a stay-at-home dad. Hello, Björn. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Kari. Nice to see you.
It is really nice to see you. And it's like, from one continent to the other. So it's so now what I ask my guests to do in the beginning, because not everybody may know you, to introduce themselves with 5 facts, like according to the working out loud method. So if you could please introduce yourself with 5 facts.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for asking. I have 5 facts. So my first fact is that I'm an office and needs market facilitator, which is a guided process where communities or members can identify and exchange their passions, needs, knowledge, and skills and resources. It's a really, really nice concept. This is first fact. The second one is that I'm the founder of the Empathy Lounge, which is a space for practicing empathy. The third fact is I'm also a trained pastry chef, and I made the Monster Book of Monsters for one of the birthday parties for my daughter in 1 year, so based on the Harry Potter movie design. Fourth fact is I used to live for 6 years in the UK over the last 6 years, and I'm currently living in a motorhome with my families. And the fifth fact is, I'm starting to learn guitar again, which mainly is the result of meeting someone here on my journey, who showed me a couple of things that made me like really re-warming with with playing guitar.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. And you're definitely my very first guest that is in a motorhome as we are recording this show. So super appreciative, and we will talk about this a little bit later. And first, I'd love to talk, as this is part of the 31 days of transferable skills, where I talk with people from all over the world, what type of transferable skills they have learned from unpaid care work, volunteering, extensive traveling, and caregiving in general. And I also would like to say hello to anybody who might be watching us right now, or who is watching it afterwards in the replay format, or in the future will be listening to us, as this is also becoming an episode of the podcast Job Sharing and Beyond. And so because of the focus on the transferable skills, I would love to talk a little bit more with you, Björn, about before you started your career, how much did you know, or what experience did you have with caregiving?
Initially, I thought I probably didn't have one, but actually I did community service, and I worked in a school with people or children mainly with special needs, and it was like a very mentally challenging task to do. But it taught me so many things, and I worked with younger and little older children, and it was something that I was quite able to do. People were just showing me that I was quite empathetic with them, and how I treated them was quite natural. I wasn't like trying to separate, and or it didn't look like this. Or though I would say it was quite challenging sometimes, depending on the grade of the special needs they had. And I would even argue that, in my personal opinion, at least 50% of our professional work should be actually every single year in community service, through our different community works that we have in our society. I learned so much from it, and I'm valuing so many people, what they do in their daily life and for every single day. And I feel like, especially when we talk about dads, often it comes from coming from a background of office jobs and so on and so forth, and the challenges are different, and I'm coming from a very, very different background, at least. Starting as pastry chef and having this community service is in Germany quite popular, but still, I think many did other things than I did, in terms of caring for children.
I think this is such an important point, the community service, because I also feel like even in a high school setting or university setting, if there was a sort of quote unquote compulsory part to it that would require pretty much everybody to do more community service, it, I think, would help younger children / young adults having a very different understanding of what care work is actually like. And I think, and as you described, your own work, it just sort of the practical aspect, and it will, I think, help create soft skills, or social skills that they might not have been aware, or might not realize what it actually does. So and the pastry chef, that sounds, I'm a big fan of sweet things, so I'd like to find out more about that. But so now this is a perfect segue, because you've been a stay-at-home dad, and so I imagine your daughter must be very lucky to have a stay-at-home dad who is also a pastry chef. But what actually made you initially decide to become a stay-at-home dad?
Yeah. So I think how happy my daughter is with it. We probably need to ask her, and I think it would probably, her answer would probably depend on the current situation. um, but yeah, I think the decision came from a mix from supporting my wife while she studied at that time, and I was already like 5 years like separated in terms of age, and so I was already working for some time, and she was studying, so we became quite young parents, and so me making the decision to taking on the father role more was like also a mixture of like in Germany, for example, at that time they initiated this program for dads. It wasn't like it was today. I think it's even it has even improved over the time, but it was for me the starting point really to get into this. And I'm one of those daddies who decided to take full the time. So we shared the full lot of it. So half her and half me, which is quite often different, like because many dads only take like 1 or 2 months, and or like they're taking it together and traveling. And we at that time, we just spent that time. Yeah.
That's so interesting. And now you've already alluded a little bit before, your community work, what you have learned, but are there any other transferable skills that you had learned in your professional life before becoming a stay-at-home dad that were helpful for you to be using in a home setting?
Mm. That's a really interesting question, because for me, it really feels like there's no single skill that can't be transferred to another part in your life. So I feel like, okay, for me, it would be more like a decision, like what became I more aware of, like I'm transferring it. Because there's so many, I couldn't even decide to, oh yeah, what helped me most. Because for example, when I'm taking the learnings from my like trainings or school and so on and so forth, there were a couple of things that I could take. Like for example, I was like a restaurant manager before I got into this parenting time, and there was definitely like this manager mindset in terms of what I learned about communication, for example, and leading and such things. Although I didn't need it at that time that much, because she was quite young. At the first time, it was just like being there, uh, yeah, I also wasn't scared about like having contact with my daughter in terms of like caring, like doing the proper care work with changing nappies and all this stuff. I never felt like this was a challenge for me. Yeah, this was something. Is there something else? Yeah, and making cakes, for example, is definitely a
I know.
good
I
thing.
mean, this is sort of the interesting thing is like, especially when the children are young, like, birthday parties and other gatherings, I'm sure, you must have been like people might have said, oh, here's another cake made by Björn, or and so I'm curious, like, what was it like being a stay-at-home dad? Were there other stay-at-home dads in your
Mm.
area, or were you the only one,
Mm.
and what did it feel like?
As I said, at that time I was quite young, and all the other parents around me and my wife were like at least 10 years older. So we had actually no network of other parents. Our friends were all just like our age. They were studying. Oh, and I lost the camera, as I promised.
This is life, and we
Yeah,
are
this is life.
talking
But
with
let
you
me
in a motorhome, so
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So, but I'm trying to like reconnect it. Otherwise, I'm just switching the camera, and it probably works then again. Let's see.
Okay,
Um, yeah.
here you are
So
back.
here I am. So where was yeah,
You
so
were
they
yeah.
were 10 years older, and so there was actually no like network that we had. It just started when my daughter got to like the preschool stuff or like kindergarten things. And what I did then after taking like the 9 month off, I decided even to quit my job at that time, to just fully make a cut, and got again into community service. And through having more time available, I got in contact with like with the carers for my daughter, and I was like always volunteering and stuff like that. And by that, I got somehow involved to actually become a day carer for I think three or 3.5 years
Oh
myself. So
wow. Oh
I got
wow.
I got trained as a day carer, and have taken other children as well. And I think one of the most interesting like occurrences in that time was when I met an old lady who was approaching me when I walked with I think 4 or 5 children. I think it have been 4 or 5, and she was just so amazed seeing a man in my age walking with those children, and she just talked to me, and I shared with her that I'm a day carer and that I'm doing this professionally. I didn't earn a lot of money for this, but it gave me the opportunity to connect my daughter with other children, have a
Right.
little bit work, being self-employed, and like having just this right environment, because we also didn't live close by her grandparents, for example. So and she was just so amazed by this, and I asked her, how many children do you have? And she was saying something like 6 or 7. And so I turned it around and said, actually, I should be the person who should be inspired by you because of the stuff you're doing. And she was so touched by this, and then we had a conversation around this, and it really like made me so aware, like people, especially women, were like so um, amazed and appreciating me doing this work, but it doesn't really happen the other way around. So I have become, not through this, I think it started even before, but I'm really an advocate for woman position, because I think we are quite unconventional in many things, and I think one of the reasons is that actually over the last years, or since my daughter is born, she's 12 now, most of the time we had like reversed roles. So I took the main time of like carrying stuff, which gives me quite an insight of how women feel often, but with the addition of being a man and like having like just having other challenges on the one hand, but becoming or getting appreciation for things that a woman often doesn't get. That was quite teaching for me.
Thank you so much for sharing, Björn. And I'm really appreciative. I'm very appreciative of your advocacy, because I agree. It's, I would say in general, like, care work as a whole, I feel is still very much undervalued. And so for you to, make a point in, emphasizing the importance, and, especially as there are a lot of women, as you said, who it often is sort of like, well, maybe taken for granted, really, all the, the work. So I'm super appreciative. And now I'd like to know, so, with your current, professional life as a coach, and, all the other things you do, what do you feel, what transferable skills do you feel you gained from your time as being a stay-at-home dad that is
Mm.
really helpful now?
Mm. I think because for someone who doesn't know me or never worked with me, it probably appears quite weird, like having me like this career change and now being a life coach. But actually, nothing could have taught me more being a life coach than being a dad for my daughter, because for me, I feel like what adults often don't see is that we have so much potential to learn from children in terms of presence, in terms of listening skills, in terms of like noticing small things. I've learned so much from my daughter. She is actually she is probably my most valuable teacher, mentor, coach, mirror. And she is now, as she's getting older, she's even more challenging, which just helps me even more to become more aware of how I can actually help my clients in terms of presence. When people have the first conversation with me, they are often giving me the feedback of that they never experienced such a presence by someone in terms of listening and being curious, or not interrupting too often, or giving advice. For example, I try to avoid giving advice to my daughter. And this is something that I'm doing with my clients, because my work is not so much about being a mentor or being a teacher or trainer. It's more about helping them to provide the safe space to be connected with their inner wisdom. Because from my experience so far, often we already have everything that we need to, like achieve anything that we want to achieve, but we don't trust it, and we worry. We we need to do another training, we need to read another book, we need to watch another TED talk, and we need to do this and that and so on. So this is really, I think, the key, the main key, but there's so many other things as well. But I think this just came up right now.
Well, thank you for sharing this, because I so agree. It's like, and like also when, say somebody is a manager in an organization with the team, all the skills you've just described are so helpful, and they can be so easily transferred. But I feel often people don't realize it or know about it. And as you are saying, instead of like a manager maybe micromanaging, or kind of, kind of just like, creating the pathway and saying this is how you need to do it, instead of just giving some guidance, and then, leading with support and confidence that that person can actually, go to the next step. And just as it would be with a child, where, initially they might be not confident that they can be doing something new, and as a parent, guiding them. And so your active listening, as you described, I think is definitely key. And so thank you for helping more people learn about it, because I really really feel that that's something, hopefully going forward, more people are aware. And also that, you know all these skills that you have learned, it's a gender neutral thing. It doesn't mean that, what, like, as often, sadly, still care work or a carer is often associated with being a female person, where that's, thank you for, being the evidence that it really, anybody can do care work, yeah, regardless of the gender.
Yeah, I would even argue that there's no skill at all that's gender related. There's no skill. I think it's we might have tendencies, and we are, and the rest is often just influenced by our culture.
Yeah.
And this is the main key. If we understand us as a society that we are we are not, because of mainly our training or the things that we proactively learn, but actually a result of the culture we are like, but not like just, it's not an outside thing. I think it's, for me, learning, for example, is a mutual service. If I never need to, for example, I think the best advice for a parent can be, you never need to worry about your child not learning enough if you are willing to learn from a child.
Yeah.
because you're a role model, you're an example, so you never need to worry. But I see so many parents worrying about the path their children take, and then they're trying to control. And this
Yeah.
is the same thing that we see in business when a manager doesn't see the particular results he wants to see. They want to control, and they're doing this manage stuff and so on. But actually, the willingness to first learn from actually the people that working with you, working for you, and exchange having this exchanging experience, it would be so much more beneficial for everybody. But yeah, we're not quite there yet.
Well, I think you are definitely, one great example. So thank you. And the other thing I'd love to learn more about, you've been now, as we've talked about earlier, traveling around Europe in a motorhome. And
Mm.
so I'm just curious, what kind of, things or skills have you already learned during this journey? Could you share a bit more with our audience?
Yeah. I think the one of the things is probably there are not so many new skills that I learn. It's more like the environment offers me space to practice things. For example, reaching out to like strangers. It's so much more fun, and it gives. I wouldn't say you have automatically more confidence, but because you're in that environment, it's necessary to ask for help. So asking for help is such a great thing to be able to. So you can learn this, for example. Then the other thing is everyday consciousness, like not taking anything for granted. Like my water usage, how many times I need a loo at a day sometimes, like these weird things that you never really consider in a like um, location-based life, I would say.
Right.
I try to avoid not say like unnormal and normal life and unnormal life. The other thing is, and what this is something really like, it gives me so much hope about humanity, because traveling always offers you help. It's like there's such a community sense that you will experience when you open up to travel, open up to reach out to people. I ordered my first beer, for example, and fries in Spanish, for example, and people are just becoming delighted by your effort. And
Right.
for example, my neighbor here offered me actually his car just for taking it to drive to somewhere without any attachment to it, for example. So there's so many things that I could like, go through, that I'm learning every day. And yeah, traveling itself is just such an individual experience. So yeah, again, like community sense is one of the things. And for me, there are many learnings. I could like share a list of many learnings with you afterwards, or like share a link where I share these in the near future. But it's really like having the space for practicing what's already within me, and just wants to have the space, like guitar playing. I
Right.
would argue that I'm very good at playing guitar, but my main problem was not being able to play guitar. I never took the effort to play it actually, but having the space and like the right environment that helps me just made me so excited that I'm now really um try to learn every day, at least a little bit.
But I mean, this is so interesting. And now, are people able to follow you guys on your journey? And where would they, learn more about it?
Yeah, so so far we haven't managed to write too much about it, but we're writing about this. So there's a Medium page that we having, and the project is calling On Tour with You. So I think if you Google it and you put my name onto it, you should find the page. I have started 2 articles so far, but my wife is also writing about this. So because we're looking at our journey from different perspectives, and even I hope my daughter is publishing a few things. Because she is quite a gifted writer, so I'm really hoping that she, tries to put something out there. And so yeah, it's really about it's about so many things. For on the one hand, if for us it's a learning journey in terms of sustainability, so we are meeting different projects and communities that are caring for sustainable approaches. And one of the key things for setting up something is often community. So and this is like my main subject, for example. How do communities structures themselves? What are their challenges? How do they overcome their challenges? And we also try to involve ourselves with the skills that we're having. So it's also like a skill exchange journey as well. So there's a lot in it, and we're just trying to write about our experience, but with some depth. So that's why we don't want to do like a daily blog, or we didn't start with it. I'm considering it at the moment with just daily insights, because I often hear friends like, oh yeah, you need to write a little bit. So I'm probably sharing more pictures on my Instagram or social media in general. So probably on LinkedIn, or cross-pollinating the social media platforms.
Well, thank you. And I will be sure, we will put it afterwards into the comments as well, the link, so people can follow as well. Because I feel, honestly, especially now during the pandemic, there is, far less opportunity to travel. So I feel, you guys sort of like, we can live through you and your journey to, see different places and hear, as you, said, ordering some, a beer or something in a different language. And yeah, so it's, it just sounds so interesting. And now, Björn, is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience today that we have not covered yet?
Our conversation was quite full with lots of things, and I feel like adding something feels not right at the moment. So I think maybe then, yeah, I have it. I think, yeah, just reach out to me. I would love to get to know new people, and to all of those who are listening to this and would be interested to like having a really meaningful, deep, full conversation and going through something. I invite them to have at least one conversation, one deep, meaningful conversation with me, and see in which way I can support or help them. I think this is something I would like to share. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Björn. I mean, it's really, really nice, talking with you and learning about more about your background and and the experiences you're going through as a family right now in your motorhome. And Björn, it was super nice having you as my guest today.
It was such a pleasure to be your guest, Karin. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was really great. It also gave me the opportunity to reflect on the last couple of weeks and on my life in general. I think it's just amazing. And yeah, another invitation. Invite me if you feel like I should be, I should talk to someone else in a podcast or interview. It's just great fun. I really enjoyed the time with you, Karin.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I very much appreciated the opportunity talking to Björn and learning about the transferable skills that he has gained from being a stay-at-home dad and from traveling around with his family in a motorhome across Europe. And this episode, this bonus episode, concludes the episodes that I initially had recorded as LinkedIn Lives as part of the 31 Days of Transferable Skills initiative. The next episode will be the first episode of Season 3 of Job Sharing and Beyond. I am very appreciative to have as my first guest in that season Ulrike Kremer, who is the Generations Ambassador in Germany. Thank you so much for listening to the show. We hope you gained valuable insights and new ideas. To keep listening to future episodes, please head over to iTunes or your favorite player and subscribe and give it a rating. We would very much appreciate a review and for you to share it on social media, so more people can start innovating in how they offer employment. Until the next time, goodbye!